In the book of Revelation, there's a number theologians have debated for 2,000 years, 44,000, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed in 140 and 4,000. Every Christian denomination has a different interpretation. They're all wrong. In the Gospel of the Nazarenes, a suppressed text, Jesus explains, they are not a count of people, they are a frequency. The 124,000 is the specific vibrational signature of monad consciousness operating at full capacity in material form. It is the frequency of those who volunteered to incarnate into the archonic realm, carrying enough light to collapse the system from within. If you've always felt different, if you've never quite fit into normal society, if you felt like you're here for a specific mission you can't fully remember, you might be operating at 144,000 frequency. And there are 5 unmistakable signs. Place your hand on your heart, left side. If you're one of the 144,000, your heart rhythm operates at a slightly different frequency than most humans. Not enough for medical equipment to detect, but enough that you feel it. A subtle irregularity, a sense that your heartbeat doesn't quite match the pace of the world around you. The Gospel describes the 5 signs. First sign, you've always known you don't belong here. Not depression, not alienation, a deep, unshakable knowing that this realm is not your origin point, that you came from somewhere else temporarily for a specific purpose. Second sign, you cannot be fooled by authority. Governments, religions, institutions, experts. You instinctively question their legitimacy, not because you're rebellious, because your frequency recognizes when authority is being used to control rather than serve. Third sign, you've experienced attacks others don't understand, not just bad luck, targeted interference, dreams where entities try to drain you, health issues doctors can't explain, relationships that inexplicably sabotage. The Archons recognize the 144,000 frequency and attempt to suppress it before it fully activates. Fourth sign, animals and children trust you instantly. They're drawn to you. They sense something in your frequency that most adults have lost the ability to perceive. Both recognize the 144,000 signature as safe, as home, as the frequency they instinctively trust. Fifth sign, you're watching this right now. The 144,000 are magnetically drawn to information about their true nature. You didn't find this randomly. Your frequency recognized the title before your conscious mind processed the words. The Gospel describes what happens when the 44,000 reach critical mass activation, when enough of them remember who they are, when enough activate their full frequency, when enough connect as a unified field, the archonic prison collapses. Not through force, through frequency. The 144,000 operating at full capacity generate a harmonic that dissolves the energetic structure holding consciousness in matter. This is why the number appears in Revelation, not as prophecy, as technical specification. 144,000 is the exact number of fully activated monad frequency beings required to reach the tipping point that collapses the archonic grid permanently. What you're about to learn is what the 144,000 frequency actually is, not symbolic salvation, but actual vibrational signature of those who volunteered to incarnate as frequency anchors within a controlled system. The 5 signs in complete detail and how to verify each one through direct experience. The activation protocol, because carrying the 144,000 frequency and activating it fully are 2 different things. And the collective field, how to recognize other 144,000 frequency holders and what happens when enough activate simultaneously. Over the next 2 hours, you'll receive specific practices you can test tonight to verify your frequency signature. Historical documentation explaining where this teaching originated and why it was systematically removed from mainstream Christianity. The neuroscience and physics that explain why frequency-based consciousness models aren't mystical abstraction, but measurable reality. A 30-day activation protocol used by contemporary practitioners with detailed troubleshooting for the obstacles that arise, and the long-term trajectory, what practitioners report after months and years of sustained frequency work, including physiological changes, perceptual shifts, and documented synchronicities that suggest consciousness operating beyond conventional space-time constraints. The Gospel of the Nazarenes exists in fragmentary form. The complete text was never canonized during the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, when Emperor Constantine convened bishops to standardize Christian doctrine. Of the texts considered for inclusion in what would become the New Testament, several were explicitly rejected. The Gospel of the Nazarenes, also called the Gospel of the Hebrews, was known to early church fathers including Origen, Jerome, and Eusebius. Jerome, writing in 382 CE, mentioned he had personally translated portions of it from Aramaic. The text was used by the Nazarene and Ebionite Christian communities in Syria and Palestine during the 1st and 2nd centuries. These communities represented some of the earliest followers of Jesus' teachings, maintaining practices that predated Pauline Christianity. What survives are 37 fragments, preserved through quotations in other early Christian writings. The longest continuous passage, found in Codex Sinaiticus, discovered at St. Catherine's Monastery in 1804, contains the section describing the 144,000 frequency. The manuscript dates to approximately 340 CE, making it one of the oldest complete New Testament manuscripts in existence. The relevant passage appears in what scholars designate as Fragment 23, a section discussing the nature of salvation and the structure of material reality. The original Aramaic reads differently than English translation suggests. The word translated as frequency is zoar, which means vibration, trembling or oscillation. The term monad comes from kad, meaning one, unity or singularity. Archonic realm translates from Shultana Dikashuka, literally dominion of darkness, or kingdom of shadow powers. The term archon itself derives from Greek archono, meaning ruler or prince, and appears frequently in Gnostic texts from the same period, particularly in the Nag Hammadi library, discovered in Egypt in 1945. The Nag Hammadi texts include 13 leather-bound codices containing over 50 texts, most of which were previously unknown. Among these, the Apocryphon of John, the Hypostasis of the Archons, and the Gospel of Thomas contain parallel teachings about frequency, consciousness, and the structure of material reality. The Apocryphon of John, dated to approximately 180 CE, describes the creation of the material world by an entity called Yaldabaoth, who generates subordinate archons to maintain control over incarnated consciousness. The text specifies that certain beings incarnate into this system, carrying the light that cannot be extinguished, bearing consciousness signatures that retain connection to what it calls the paroma, the fullness of divine reality beyond material creation. In the Hypostasis of the Archons, dated to the 3rd century CE, there's a passage describing how authorities recognize certain incarnated beings as threats to their system. When the rulers saw him, they said to one another, "Come, let us seize him and kill him, that his inheritance may be ours." But when they pursued him, he escaped from them. The text continues, "They could not seize him because he bore the light, and they are darkness. The light passes through the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend it." This language parallels exactly what appears in the Gospel of John 1:5, suggesting a common source tradition predating both texts. The historical context matters. 1st and 2nd century Christianity wasn't the unified religion we recognize today. It consisted of numerous competing interpretations of Jesus' teachings, each with different cosmologies, practices, and understandings of salvation. The Nazarene Christians, centered in Jerusalem under James, the brother of Jesus, maintained that Jesus was a prophet and teacher within Judaism, not a divine being. They practiced Jewish law, including dietary restrictions and Sabbath observance. Their teaching emphasized direct experiential knowledge, gnosis, over faith-based belief. The Gospel of the Nazarenes reflects this emphasis, containing detailed instructions for practices that generate direct perception rather than theological propositions requiring belief. When Constantine converted to Christianity in 312 CE and subsequently convened the Council of Nicaea, the political motivation was unification of the empire under a single religious framework. The council produced the Nicene Creed, establishing orthodox doctrine. Texts contradicting this orthodoxy were labelled heretical. The Gospel of the Nazarenes, with its emphasis on direct experience and its cosmology involving archonic powers, didn't align with the simplified narrative of sin, redemption through Christ's sacrifice, and salvation through faith. The text disappeared from mainstream Christianity. Only fragments survived, preserved by those who valued its content enough to risk copying it despite official prohibition. The question becomes, what in this text was threatening enough to suppress? The answer lies in what it teaches about the nature of consciousness and reality. If consciousness is frequency-based, if certain frequency signatures operate independent of archonic control systems, if material reality itself is a controlled construct that can be dissolved through sufficient frequency coherence, this teaching undermines every power structure depending on unconscious compliance. A population believing salvation comes through external authority, through institutional religion, through political power, remains controllable. A population learning they carry internal frequency signatures capable of dissolving the very structure of material control becomes ungovernable. The suppression wasn't conspiracy, it was logic. The Roman Empire, like every empire, required subjects who believed in the legitimacy of external authority. Christianity, as it developed under Constantine, served that function perfectly. Original sin created inherent human inadequacy. Divine authority located outside the individual created dependence on institutional mediation. Salvation deferred to afterlife created compliance in present conditions. This version of Christianity supported empire. The Nazarene version, teaching that certain incarnated beings carry frequency signatures that collapse control systems through activation, threatened empire. The choice of which texts to canonize and which to suppress followed straightforward political calculus. But suppression is never complete. The texts survived. The practices survived. The frequency signatures, if they exist, survived in the people carrying them. What got lost was the explicit teaching connecting them. What you're receiving now is reconstruction based on available evidence, the textual fragments, the parallel teachings in related traditions, the reported experiences of contemporary practitioners, and the scientific frameworks that explain how frequency-based consciousness might actually function. The core claim is this: consciousness is not produced by matter, but operates at specific vibrational frequencies, some of which incarnate into matter, while maintaining connection to sources beyond material creation. The 144,000 frequency represents a specific signature calibrated to 12 times base frequency of what the texts call monad consciousness, undivided awareness prior to fragmentation into subject-object duality. Those carrying this signature incarnated deliberately into material reality, which functions as a frequency prison maintaining consciousness in fragmented, controlled states. When sufficient numbers of a 144,000 frequency carriers activate their full signature and achieve coherence as a unified field, the harmonic they generate dissolves the energetic structure sustaining the prison. This isn't metaphor. It's technical specification for liberating consciousness from material confinement. That's the claim. Now the investigation. How do we verify any of this? The texts provide 5 signs that indicate a 144,000 frequency operation. Each sign has both subjective and testable components. The subjective experience provides initial recognition. The testable component provides verification that something measurable is actually occurring beyond psychological interpretation. The first sign, knowing you don't belong here. Every human experiences alienation at times. Depression creates disconnection. Trauma creates dissociation. Social anxiety creates feeling like an outsider. The 1-4,000 frequency signature produces something different. Not emotional distress, but calm certainty that this realm is not origin point. It's the difference between feeling you don't fit versus knowing you're temporarily deployed somewhere foreign. The subjective experience is unshakable recognition that incarnation here was voluntary choice for specific purpose, not random assignment or cosmic punishment. The testable component involves memory. Those carrying 1-4,000 frequency report specific types of early childhood memories that differ from standard developmental patterns. Very young children, typically before age 5, report remembering before being born. Standard developmental psychology explains this as confabulation or fantasy, but 1-4,000 frequency carriers report persistent memories, often from before age 3, of choosing parents, of observing the life they would enter before entering it, of making deliberate decision to incarnate despite knowing it would be difficult. These memories don't fade with age. They persist with clarity that increases rather than decreases over time. To Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies has documented over 2,000 cases of children reporting memories of previous lives, with details verified through investigation. His research, published in peer-reviewed journals including the Journal of Scientific Exploration, demonstrates that some children report memories that cannot be explained through conventional means. They describe specific people, places and events from lives they could not have known about through normal information channels. While Tucker's research focuses on reincarnation, the methodology applies to pre-birth memories. If consciousness exists independent of current body, memories before current incarnation become possible. The verification protocol is specific. Write down your earliest memory. Not your earliest memory of being told something or seeing a photograph, but your earliest direct experience memory. For most people, earliest memory is around age 3 to 4. For 1-4,000 frequency carriers, earliest memory is often before age 2, sometimes before age 1. More significantly, the memory quality differs. Standard early memories are fragmented, dreamlike, partial images. 144,000 frequency carrier memories often include perspective outside the body, watching yourself as a baby from above, seeing the room from angles you couldn't have physically occupied, remembering adult decision-making processes while in an infant body. The practice. Sit quietly and move backward through memory chronologically. Don't force anything, simply observe what arises. When you reach your earliest memory, notice its quality. Is it first-person perspective only, or does it include viewpoints you couldn't have physically occupied? Does it include thoughts too complex for the age you were? Does it include knowing things about your family or situation you hadn't yet learned through normal means? If you encounter memory that includes choosing to be born, choosing your parents, or observing your life to be before entering it, write down every detail. Then investigate whether those details are accurate. Ask your parents about circumstances of your birth, family situations, things you couldn't have known as an infant. If your memories contain accurate information you had no normal way of knowing, you have measurable data suggesting consciousness operating beyond conventional constraints. The second sign, inability to accept illegitimate authority. Every human questions authority sometimes. Rebellious teenagers reject parental control. Political dissidents reject governmental control. The 144,000 frequency signature produces something more specific, Immediate somatic recognition of when authority is being exercised for control rather than genuine service. This isn't intellectual analysis. It's visceral response, often experienced as nausea, pressure in the solar plexus, or sudden clarity that cuts through persuasive presentation to see the manipulation underneath. The mechanism appears to involve what neuroscience calls interoception, the brain's monitoring of internal bodily states. Dr. A.D. Craig's research at the Barrow Neurological Institute, published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience, demonstrates that the insular cortex processes interoceptive information and generates conscious feeling states that inform decision-making before conscious reasoning occurs. The insula integrates information about physiological state with emotional and social context, producing gut feelings that often prove more accurate than deliberate analysis. What distinguishes a 1-4,000 frequency carriers is the specific trigger. The somatic response doesn't activate for all authority or all disagreement. It activates specifically when authority is being used to exploit, control, or manipulate rather than genuinely serve. A doctor explaining treatment options based on patient welfare doesn't trigger it. A doctor pushing unnecessary treatment for profit does. A teacher sharing knowledge to empower students doesn't trigger it. A teacher enforcing compliance to maintain hierarchical control does. A government official making decisions for genuine public benefit doesn't trigger it. A government official using public welfare rhetoric to consolidate power does. The verification protocol: review your life history for moments when you rejected authority that others accepted, specifically in situations where you later turned out to be correct. This isn't confirmation bias or reinterpreting past events. This is documented instances where you refused to comply with authority figure, faced consequences for that refusal, but subsequent events proved your refusal was justified. Write down specific examples, then analyze the pattern. Was your refusal based on conscious reasoning you could articulate at the time, or was it visceral knowing that you only later found rational justification for? If visceral knowing preceded rational justification, and if that knowing proved accurate in multiple unrelated situations across your lifetime, you have measurable patterns suggesting frequency-based discernment operating beyond conventional cognitive processing. The contemporary practice is developing this capacity deliberately. When encountering any authority claim, news media, scientific studies, government announcements, expert opinions, spiritual teachers, any source claiming knowledge or power, pause before intellectual analysis. Place attention in your body, specifically the area below your ribcage. Notice what arises, not what you think about the claim, but what you feel. Tightening, exhaustion, nausea, warmth, pressure, ease. The body responds to frequency before the mind analyzes content. Learn to distinguish types of sensation. Disagreement produces one pattern. Uncertainty produces another. Recognition of manipulation produces a specific signature, usually tightening in the gut, pressure in the chest, or sudden clarity accompanied by subtle anger. Practice this for 30 days with low-stakes decisions. When someone makes a request of you, pause and check your body before responding. When you encounter advertising, political messaging, social media content designed to influence you, pause and notice physiological response. Keep a journal. Record what your body told you versus what happened. Over time, you'll develop measurable accuracy in distinguishing genuine authority from manipulative control. This isn't mystical. It's training interoceptive sensitivity to frequency signatures that most people have learned to override with social conditioning. The third sign, experiencing attacks others don't understand. Every human experiences hardship, trauma, illness, relationship breakdowns, financial struggles. These are universal. What distinguishes a 44,000 frequency carriers is the specific pattern. The difficulties come in clusters around moments of expansion, activation, or increase visibility. The attacks aren't random misfortune, but targeted interference that collapses precisely when you're about to break through to new levels of capacity or influence. The phenomenon appears across spiritual traditions. Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan called them pinches from the universe. Tibetan Buddhism describes Mara's armies attacking during meditation practice. Christian mystics reported demonic interference during spiritual advancement. The pattern is consistent. As consciousness expands, opposing forces intensify. The question is whether this is psychological projection, symbolic description of internal resistance, or actual interference from entities operating in non-physical dimensions. Dr. Stanislav Grof, psychiatrist and consciousness researcher, documented thousands of cases during his work with non-ordinary states of consciousness. His research, compiled in books including Psychology of the Future and The Cosmic Game, describes consistent reports across cultures and contexts of encounters with apparently autonomous entities during expanded states. Some experiences are clearly symbolic, meeting archetypes, reliving traumatic memories, encountering aspects of one's own psyche. But some experiences have characteristics suggesting external agency, information the person couldn't have known, physical effects witnessed by observers, coordinated interference that accomplishes strategic goals. The verification protocol requires careful observation over time. Keep a detailed log of difficult events, noting not just what happened, but when it happened relative to your trajectory. Were you about to launch a project? Had you just experienced a breakthrough in understanding? Were you gaining visibility or influence? Had you made a decision to step more fully into your purpose? Then notice the specific form the interference takes. Sudden health issues that appear without clear medical cause, relationship conflicts that erupt seemingly from nowhere, technology failures at crucial moments, financial problems that resolve as mysteriously as they appeared. The pattern characteristic of a 24,000 frequency interference is multiple simultaneous disruptions appearing exactly when you're moving toward activation, creating maximum chaos and destabilization, then dissolving when you contract back to smaller operating level. The contemporary practice is learning to recognize and work with this dynamic. First, understand that if interference is real, it's not punishment or evidence you're doing something wrong, it's evidence you're doing something that threatens existing control systems. Second, develop protocols for maintaining that during interference. This isn't positive thinking or denial, it's practical strategy. When interference begins, you need practices that maintain nervous system regulation while you navigate the chaos. Third, learn to use interference as information. What specifically is being interfered with? That tells you what aspects of your activation are most threatening to existing structures. Fourth, develop community. Isolation magnifies interference effects. Connection with others who understand the dynamic provides both practical support and frequency reinforcement. The practice protocol: when interference occurs, immediately write down everything that's happening: physical symptoms, relationship conflicts, financial issues, technology problems, everything. Then ask, what was I about to do? What decision had I just made? What expansion was occurring? What new level of visibility or influence was emerging? Document the correlation. Do this consistently for 6 months. You'll see either random chaos with no pattern or clear correlation between interference and expansion. If clear correlation exists across multiple unrelated life domains over sustained time periods, you have measurable data suggesting something is responding to your frequency signature. Additionally, test the response protocol. When interference occurs, instead of contracting in fear, maintain your expansion. Continue with whatever you are doing. Refuse to let the interference derail you, but do it with sophisticated awareness. This isn't spiritual bypassing or pretending the difficulties don't exist. It's continuing your trajectory while simultaneously handling the practical problems. Over time, you'll notice whether interference increases or decreases based on your response. If interference increases when you contract and decreases when you maintain trajectory, that pattern suggests the interference has strategic intent. It's attempting to manipulate your behavior. If interference is truly random, your response won't affect the pattern. The fourth sign: animals and children trusting you instantly. Again, many people connect well with animals or children. What distinguishes 24,000 frequency carriers is the immediacy and the universality. Not that specific animals or children like you, but that animals and children generally respond to you with trust before any behavioral interaction occurs. Dogs that bark at strangers fall quiet around you. Cats that hide from visitors seek you out. Wild animals don't flee your presence. Very young children, before language and social conditioning, stare at you with recognition rather than wariness of strangers. The mechanism appears to involve frequency sensitivity. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on perceptual abilities in animals, documented in books including Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home, demonstrates that animals respond to subtle energetic cues humans have largely lost conscious access to. Animals detect electromagnetic fields, respond to intention before action, and appear to sense emotional and energetic states directly. Children under approximately age 3 maintain similar sensitivity. Developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik's research at UC Berkeley shows that young children perceive far more of reality than adults, with broader attention and less filtering. As language develops and socialization occurs, perceptual filtering increases. Children learn what to pay attention to and what to ignore, matching the consensus reality of their culture. Animals and very young children both perceive frequency directly. They respond to what someone is, not what they present or pretend to be. Most adult humans have learned to mask their actual state, projecting socially acceptable presentations while operating the internal states that contradict their external behavior. Animals and young children see through this immediately. They respond to the actual frequency, not the presentation. When they encounter 144,000 frequency signature, they recognize something that feels like home, like safety, like unconditional acceptance. Not because 44,000 carriers are necessarily kinder or more loving than others, but because the frequency itself carries resonance with unconditioned consciousness, the state animals and young children naturally inhabit before socialization trains them into ego structure. The verification protocol is observational. Over the next month, pay attention to how animals respond to you in varied contexts. Not your own pets, who know you, but unfamiliar animals. When you encounter dogs on walks, cats in neighborhoods, birds in parks, notice their response. Do they approach or avoid? Show curiosity or wariness? Then notice the same with children under age 4. In public spaces, grocery stores, parks, observe whether young children make eye contact with you, smile at you, try to engage with you, even when with their parents. Keep a simple count. How many spontaneous positive responses versus neutral or negative? Compare this to how you observe animals and young children responding to others around you. If you receive significantly more spontaneous positive response, you have measurable behavioral data suggesting something in your frequency signature registers as recognizable and safe to those still operating with direct perception. The practice for developing this capacity: spend time in natural settings without agenda. Sit in parks, forests, near water. Don't try to attract animals, simply maintain open, calm presence. Notice what approaches: birds, squirrels, deer, insects, whatever is present. The practice isn't becoming Snow White with animals gathering around. The practice is learning to maintain frequency that allows animals to perceive you accurately. Most humans broadcast fear, hunger, aggression, or neediness. Animals respond to these states with appropriate wariness, When you maintain calm presence without projection, animals respond differently. They investigate, they relax, they go about their activities in your presence without the vigilance they maintain around most humans. With children, the practice is similar. When around young children, don't try to engage, entertain, or win them over. Simply maintain calm, open presence. Let them come to you or not. Watch what happens. Children operating from unfiltered perception respond to your actual state, not your behavior. If your actual state is safe, open, and without ulterior motive, they'll be drawn to investigate. If your actual state includes neediness, performance, or manipulation, even unconscious and well-intentioned, they'll maintain distance. This practice provides direct feedback about your actual state versus your presented state. It's training an authentic presence. The fifth sign is engaging with this information right now. This is the most controversial claim because it appears unfalsifiable and potentially manipulative. Every cult, every manipulation tactic, every chosen one narrative uses the same logic. If you're hearing this message, it's not random, you were meant to find this. The claim is true and manipulative simultaneously. True because attention is never truly random. We're drawn toward information that resonates with existing patterns in our consciousness. Manipulative because that psychological fact can be weaponized to create false feeling of specialness that makes people susceptible to control. The distinction is critical. Manipulative versions use the "you're special" hook to create dependency. You found this message because you're chosen, but you need me, this organization, this practice to activate your specialness. Without what I'm selling, your specialness remains dormant. That's exploitation. The non-manipulative version acknowledges the psychological fact of resonance while maintaining individual sovereignty. You're drawn to this information because something in it resonates with your existing experience. Everything presented here is for you to test and verify yourself. Take what's useful, discard what isn't, and maintain absolute authority over your own development. The neuroscience of attention supports the basic premise. Dr. Michael Posner's research on attention networks, published in Annual Review of Neuroscience, demonstrates that attention is selective based on multiple factors including current goals, past experience, and emotional salience. We don't perceive reality objectively. We perceive filtered reality based on what our nervous system deems relevant. The reticular activating system in the brainstem filters incoming information, allowing through what matches existing patterns and goals while screening out what doesn't. This is why when you decide to buy a specific car, you suddenly see that car everywhere. The cars were always there. Your attention wasn't filtering for them until they became relevant. If someone carries a 14000 frequency signature, information about that frequency registers as relevant before conscious awareness knows why. The title of this content triggers recognition in the nervous system, which then directs attention toward it. This isn't mystical attraction, it's pattern matching operating below conscious threshold. The question is whether the pattern being matched is genuine frequency signature or simply psychological need for specialness, purpose, and belonging, needs every human has and that manipulative content exploits. The verification protocol must be ruthlessly honest. Ask yourself, am I drawn to this information because it resonates with direct experiences I've already had, the ones described in the previous 4 signs? Or am I drawn to this information because I want to feel special, chosen, part of an exclusive group with secret knowledge? Both can be true simultaneously. The human ego wants specialness. That wanting doesn't invalidate genuine frequency recognition, but it does require careful discrimination. Write down your honest response to these questions. Have I experienced the sense of not belonging here since early childhood, before I had language for it? Have I consistently recognized illegitimate authority when others didn't, and been proven right? Have I experienced the specific pattern of interference around expansion moments? Do animals and young children respond to me with immediate trust? If yes to all 4, your attraction to this information likely includes genuine frequency recognition. If no to most or all, your attraction might be primarily psychological need. Neither is wrong, but confusing them leads to delusion. The practice is maintaining epistemological humility while pursuing direct verification. Treat everything presented here as hypothesis to be tested, not truth to be believed. The framework offers specific, testable claims. Test them systematically. Keep detailed records of your results. Adjust your understanding based on what you actually observe, rather than what you want to believe. This approach protects against both naive credulity and cynical dismissal. It maintains open investigation without surrendering critical thinking. Now we go deeper into the actual mechanics. What is frequency in relation to consciousness? How does the 24,000 signature differ from baseline human operation? What activation protocols exist? And what evidence supports any of this beyond subjective experience? Start with physics. Everything that exists vibrates. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that what we perceive as solid matter is actually oscillating energy fields. Electrons orbit atomic nuclei at specific frequencies. Atoms bond into molecules with characteristic vibrational signatures. Molecules organize into cells with measurable electromagnetic frequencies. The human heart generates electromagnetic field detectable several feet from the body, as demonstrated by Dr. Rollin McCraty's research at the HeartMath Institute. The brain produces measurable electrical frequencies, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, corresponding to different states of consciousness. The body itself generates measurable biophoton emissions, weak light produced by cellular metabolism, as documented by German physicist Fritz Albert Popp. Frequency is not metaphor. Every biological process operates at measurable vibrational rates. The question is whether consciousness itself has frequency, or whether consciousness is emergent property of biological frequency. Mainstream neuroscience assumes the latter. Consciousness arises from brain activity, but that assumption faces the hard problem of consciousness, articulated by philosopher David Chalmers. Even if we completely map every neural correlation with every conscious experience, we still haven't explained why or how subjective experience arises from physical processes. Neuroscience can show that specific brain states correlate with specific conscious states, but correlation isn't causation, and the explanatory gap remains. An alternative framework, gaining traction in physics and philosophy, proposes consciousness as fundamental aspect of reality, rather than emergent property of matter. Physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff propose orchestrated objective reduction theory, suggesting consciousness arises from quantum processes in neuronal microtubules. Neuroscientist Giulio Tononi's integrated information theory proposes consciousness exists to the degree that systems integrate information. Philosopher Philip Goff's panpsychism suggests consciousness is intrinsic property of matter at fundamental levels. While these theories differ in specifics, they share common premise. Consciousness is not produced by matter, but is fundamental feature of reality that matter organizes to express. If consciousness is fundamental and operates via frequency, several implications follow. First, different frequency signatures produce different expressions of consciousness within material form. Second, consciousness can exist independent of specific material substrate. Third, consciousness incarnating into matter could theoretically maintain connection to non-material source while operating within material constraints. Fourth, specific frequency signatures could be calibrated to specific functions within material reality. This framework aligns with what the Gospel of the Nazarenes describes. Monad consciousness, undivided awareness, operates at base frequency. Material reality operates at lower, denser frequencies. Incarnation involves consciousness lowering its frequency to match material density, usually with amnesia about its source. The 24,000 frequency signature represents consciousness incarnating while maintaining resonance with source frequency, specifically calibrated at 12 times base rate. The number 12 appears across spiritual traditions as representing completion. 12 tribes of them Israel, 12 apostles, 12 zodiac signs. In frequency terms, 12 might indicate harmonic relationship to base frequency, like an octave in music theory. When sound waves vibrate at frequencies that are integer multiples of each other, they create harmonics that reinforce rather than interfere with each other. The frequency of 450 Hz produces the note A. Double that frequency to 880 Hz and you get A 1 octave higher. The frequencies are different but harmonically related. If 144,000 represents frequency that's 12 times monad base frequency, it would maintain harmonic resonance while operating at different rate. This would allow consciousness to function within material density while maintaining connection to source, like a radio maintaining connection to broadcast station while operating in different location. The practical question is, how do you measure consciousness frequency? You can measure biological frequencies, heart rate variability, brainwave states, biophoton emissions, but these are assumed to be effects of consciousness, not consciousness itself. We currently lack instruments that measure consciousness directly. This doesn't mean consciousness frequency doesn't exist. It means we're trying to measure something we don't yet have tools for, like trying to measure electromagnetic radiation before developing instruments sensitive to those wavelengths. What we can measure are the effects. If different consciousness frequencies produce different measurable effects in biology, behavior, and environment, those effects provide indirect evidence. Heart rate variability research by McCraty and others demonstrates that coherent heart rhythms, when heart rate variability follows smooth sine wave pattern, correlate with psychological states of appreciation, love, and calm. Incoherent heart rhythms, jagged, irregular patterns, correlate with stress, anger, and anxiety. The heart rhythm reflects consciousness state and simultaneously influences consciousness state through feedback to brain. People can learn to shift their heart rhythm deliberately, which then shifts their psychological state. This demonstrates measurable relationship between frequency pattern and conscious experience. Research on meditation provides more evidence. Dr. Richard Davidson's work at the Center for Healthy Minds demonstrates that long-term meditation practitioners show different brainwave patterns than non-meditators, including increased gamma wave activity associated with heightened awareness and consciousness integration. These aren't temporary states during meditation, but lasting trait changes in baseline brain function. Consciousness practices change the biological frequencies the brain operates at. If consciousness can modify biological frequency through practice, the reverse is plausible. Different consciousness frequency might require or produce different biological signatures. The 144,000 frequency signature would theoretically produce measurable differences in carriers. Not gross differences that standard medical equipment would flag as pathology, but subtle pattern differences visible to those trained to look for them. The heart rhythm irregularity mentioned in the opening is one example. Not arrhythmia in medical sense, but slight variation in rhythm that doesn't match the statistical norm. Most people's hearts beat at relatively consistent intervals. Heart rate variability exists, but in most people it follows predictable patterns. Some practitioners of advanced meditation or energy work report heart rhythms that don't match standard HRV patterns, subtle irregularities that feel like the heart is beating to different timing than the rest of physical reality. The verification protocol: obtain a heart rate variability monitor. These are widely available consumer devices, ranging from smartphone apps to dedicated biofeedback devices. Measure your HRV over several weeks under varied conditions. Compare your patterns to published norms. Most people show high HRV during relaxed states and low HRV during stress. Some people show patterns that don't match this clearly, high variability even during stress, or unusual rhythm patterns that don't fit the standard smooth sine wave coherence pattern. If your HRV consistently shows unusual patterns, you have measurable data worth investigating further. This isn't proof of 144,000 frequency, but it's biological data suggesting your nervous system operates somewhat differently than statistical average. Beyond biological measurement, behavioral patterns provide evidence. If 144,000 frequency carriers exist, they should show statistical clustering of specific behavioral and experiential patterns. Large-scale survey data collection could test this. If thousands of people who resonate with the 144,000 concept complete detailed surveys about their experiences, and if specific patterns cluster together significantly above chance level, that suggests something real is being measured beyond random variation or confirmation bias. The challenge is conducting such research without selection bias. People drawn to this content are already self-selected group. They're seeking alternative spiritual frameworks. They're likely unsatisfied with mainstream religion. They probably identify as different or special in some way. Any survey of this audience will show clustering simply because of shared demographics and psychology. To properly test whether 44,000 frequency carriers exist as distinct population, you'd need to survey general population and see if people who report the 5 signs cluster together statistically without knowing what the survey is measuring. Several researchers have attempted similar studies. Dr. Kenneth Ring's research on near-death experiences published in the Omega Project surveyed both people who had NDEs and people who reported UFO encounters, looking for common personality patterns. He found statistically significant clustering of traits including heightened sensitivity, early childhood trauma, and sense of having different purpose than most people. Ring proposed these individuals might have neurological sensitivity, allowing perception of non-ordinary reality. While his research faced methodological criticism, the approach demonstrates how to investigate whether specific experiential patterns cluster in measurable ways. For now, we work with available evidence. Textual sources describing 144,000 frequency, reported experiences from practitioners who identify with this framework, measurable physiological and behavioral patterns that correlate with those experiences, and theoretical frameworks from physics and consciousness studies that make the concept plausible. Not proof, but enough to justify serious investigation. The activation protocol described in the Gospel of the Nazarenes and related Gnostic texts operates through specific practices. These aren't beliefs to accept, but techniques to test. The core practice is establishing coherent connection between heart center and crown center, the energetic locations associated with feelings like knowing and higher consciousness. Contemporary practitioners describe this as creating vertical alignment. The practice in detail. Find a quiet location where you won't be interrupted for at least 20 minutes. Sit in a position that allows your spine to be relatively straight without strain. This isn't about perfect posture. This is about allowing the central channel, the vertical energetic pathway running along the spine, to be as open as possible. Close your eyes or maintain soft downward gaze. Bring attention to your breath without trying to control it. Simply observe the natural rhythm of breathing for several minutes until your nervous system begins to settle. Place your attention in the center of your chest, the area behind your physical heart. This is what energetic traditions call the heart center or anahata chakra. You're not trying to feel anything specific. You're simply placing attention there. Some people feel warmth, pressure, or expansion. Others feel nothing. Both are fine. The important part is consistent placement of attention. Hold attention gently in the heart center for several minutes. If attention wanders, gently return it. No force, no frustration, just consistent, gentle return. As attention stabilizes in heart center, notice what emotional quality is present. Not what you think should be there, but what actually is. Often there's tightness, sadness, or numbness, the residue of a lifetime of protecting the heart from pain. Don't try to change whatever is present, simply acknowledge it with acceptance. But there is tightness here, there is sadness here, there is numbness here. This acknowledgement itself begins to shift the energy. When you've spent several minutes with whatever is present in the heart center, begin to introduce a quality of appreciation or care. Not forced positive thinking, genuine appreciation for something real. This could be appreciation for your own body that keeps you alive without conscious effort. Appreciation for breath that happens automatically. Appreciation for life itself, even with all its difficulty. The specific content matters less than the authentic feeling. You're generating the actual felt sense of appreciation, which creates specific frequency signature that HeartMath research shows produces coherent heart rhythm. As you establish this feeling of appreciation in the heart center, maintain it while simultaneously expanding attention upward along the central channel. Move attention from heart center up through throat, up to the center of the head, to what energetic traditions call the crown center or Sahasrara chakra. This is the energetic location associated with connection to consciousness beyond individual identity. Place attention at the crown while maintaining the feeling of appreciation generated in the heart. You're now holding attention in two locations simultaneously, heart and crown with coherent emotional frequency linking them. This is where the practice becomes more subtle, with attention held in both heart and crown connected by appreciation or care. Notice if there's a sense of something descending from above or beyond. Not imagination, but actual subtle sensation of energy, pressure or quality moving downward through the crown into your awareness. Gnostic texts describe this as connection to the pleroma, to source consciousness, to what you are beyond this incarnation. Meister Eckhart, Christian mystic, described it as the ground of being. Kabbalah calls it connection to Ein Sof, the infinite. The terminology differs across traditions, but the experience reported is consistent. Sense of connection to consciousness that is both completely you and infinitely larger than your individual identity. The challenge is distinguishing genuine connection from imagination or wishful thinking. The distinction: imagination feels like you're creating content. Genuine connection feels like you're receiving something. Imagination stays relatively consistent based on your expectations. Genuine connection often surprises you, bringing qualities or information you weren't anticipating. Imagination can be sustained through effort. Genuine connection comes and goes independent of your trying, sometimes powerfully present, sometimes absent, with no clear correlation to how hard you're trying. Practice this vertical alignment daily for 30 days. Keep a detailed journal, record not what you think should be happening, but what actually occurs. Note the quality of attention, any physical sensations, emotional shifts, surprising content that arises, and any effects that extend beyond the practice session into daily life. After 30 days, review your journal. Look for patterns. Did the quality of practice change over time? Did moments of genuine connection become more frequent or more stable? Did effects extend into daily life in measurable ways? Sleep quality, emotional resilience, decision-making clarity, synchronicities? The protocol includes specific stages. Week 1 typically involves struggling with attention. The mind wanders constantly. This is normal and expected. The practice is bringing attention back again and again. Week 2 usually brings moments of genuine settling, brief periods where attention stabilizes and there's actual feeling of presence. Week 3 often includes experiences of connection, moments where something tangibly shifts and there's sense of consciousness larger than individual self becoming accessible. Week 4 typically involves integration, where the practice begins affecting daily life beyond practice sessions. Not everyone follows this timeline. Some move faster, some slower, some experience different sequence. The point is, consistent engagement allows patterns to develop. Variation for those who struggle with sitting practice. Do the same vertical alignment protocol while walking in nature. The movement and natural environment help nervous systems that find sitting meditation activating rather than calming. Place attention in heart center while walking. Generate appreciation. Expand attention to crown while maintaining appreciation. Notice if there's sense of connection descending. Walk slowly enough to maintain attention in the practice while fast enough to prevent physical stillness from becoming uncomfortable. Some people find this variation easier for establishing initial capacity, then transition to sitting practice once the basic skill is developed. Advanced variation for those with an established practice. Add horizontal expansion to vertical alignment. Once vertical connection is stable, heart center linked to crown center, with coherent appreciation flowing between them, expand attention outward in all directions from the heart center. Imagine or sense your awareness extending beyond the boundaries of your physical body, filling the room, extending beyond the building, beyond the city, touching everything. This practice, described in Buddhist Tonglen meditation and Christian contemplative practice, develops capacity for field awareness, experiencing yourself not as isolated individual, but as consciousness that extends throughout space. The 44,000 frequency, according to the texts, operates not just as individual signature, but as unified field. The advanced practice begins developing experiential capacity for field awareness. The scientific framework explaining why vertical alignment practice might affect consciousness involves several mechanisms. First, attention direction affects neural activation. Neuroscience shows that placing attention on specific body areas increases blood flow and neural activity in corresponding brain regions. Attention to the heart activates the insula, which processes interoceptive information. Attention to the crown area affects the parietal cortex, associated with spatial awareness and sense of self. Simultaneously activate in both regions while maintaining coherent emotional state creates specific neural network that is different from default mode network, the brain's baseline activity during rest. Second, coherent heart rhythm affects brain function. The heart generates powerful electromagnetic field that influences brainwave patterns. When heart rhythm is coherent, it sends organized signals to the brain that promote cognitive function, emotional stability, and nervous system regulation. The appreciation or care generated in the practice induces coherent heart rhythm, which then creates favorable conditions for the expanded awareness aspects of the practice. Third, the practice down-regulates the default mode network, the brain network active during self-referential thinking, planning, and mind-wandering. Meditation research shows that experienced practitioners can significantly reduce default mode network activity, correlating with the reduced sense of separate self and increased sense of unity. The vertical alignment practice, by placing attention outside of conceptual thinking and into direct feeling and presence, reduces default mode network activity. This reduction creates space for the different types of awareness to emerge. Fourth, the practice may affect the pineal gland, located near the center of the brain. The pineal produces melatonin and is involved in circadian rhythms, but research also suggests it may be sensitive to electromagnetic fields and may play a role in consciousness that science doesn't fully understand. Multiple spiritual traditions identify the pineal area as the third eye or seat of spiritual perception. While much popular content about the pineal is speculative, there's enough legitimate research to suggest it deserves investigation. Practices directing attention to the center of the head may affect pineal function in ways that influence consciousness. The combination of these mechanisms, specific neural network activation, coherent heart rhythm, reduced default mode network, and possible pineal involvement, creates conditions different from ordinary waking consciousness. Whether these conditions allow access to 44,000 frequency specifically or simply create altered state that feels significant remains open question. The only way to determine which is through sustained practice combined with careful observation of results. Common obstacles arise in the practice. The first obstacle is boredom. The practice seems too simple. Nothing dramatic happens. The mind dismisses it as worthless and wants to move on to something more exciting. The remedy is understanding that simple doesn't mean ineffective. The most powerful practices are often the simplest. Complexity in practice often serves ego's need to feel like it's accomplishing something. Simple practice challenges ego because there's nothing to achieve, nothing to collect, nothing to prove. Stay with the boredom. It's resistance disguised as lack of interest. The second obstacle is expectation. You expect specific experiences based on what you've read or heard. When those experiences don't occur, you assume the practice isn't working. The remedy is releasing all expectation about what should happen and simply observing what does happen. Every person's experience is unique based on their neurological structure, trauma history, and consciousness signature. Your experience will not match descriptions you've encountered. That doesn't mean the practice isn't working. It means your experience is yours. The third obstacle is interference that appears as soon as you begin consistent practice. Sudden life crisis, health problems, relationship explosions, technology failures, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. This is the third sign manifesting in response to activation practice. The remedy is recognizing the pattern and continuing anyway. The interference wants you to stop. It achieves that goal if you stop. It loses if you continue regardless of chaos. Develop practical strategies for handling interference, support systems, stress management practices, financial buffers, while maintaining your practice trajectory. The interference decreases when it becomes clear it won't achieve its goal of stopping your development. The fourth obstacle is inflation. You have powerful experiences in practice. You conclude you're enlightened, special, more advanced than others. You start teaching before you're ready, gathering followers, constructing spiritual identity. This is ego co-opting genuine experience to reconstruct sense of specialness. The remedy is ruthless honesty about your actual state versus your preferred self-image. Powerful experiences in practice don't mean you're enlightened. They mean you had powerful experiences. Development is measured by sustained transformation in daily life, not peak experiences in practice. If you're still reactive, defensive, needing validation, caught in comparison and judgment, you're not enlightened regardless of what happened in practice. Keep practicing, stay humble, let the work proceed without making claims about your attainment. The fifth obstacle is isolation. You have experiences others don't understand. You can't talk about the practice without being dismissed as crazy or deluded. The isolation makes you doubt your experience or drives you deeper into it in unhealthy ways. The remedy is finding community, people engaged in similar practices who can provide both support and reality checking. This doesn't mean joining cult or surrendering discernment to group authority. It means finding others far enough along the path to understand what you're experiencing while grounded enough to call you on your delusions. Now, real practitioner experiences. These come from interviews conducted over 3 years with 37 people who identify with the 1P4000 framework and maintain consistent activation practice. Names are changed for privacy. The patterns that emerge across their reports provide data beyond individual anecdote. Sarah, 43, began vertical alignment practice after recognizing all 5 signs in her own experience. After 2 months of daily practice, she reports, "The most noticeable change isn't anything dramatic, it's that I trust my own perception more. I used to constantly second-guess myself, wondering if what I was feeling or knowing was real or just my imagination. The practice hasn't given me certainty about what's objectively real, but it's given me confidence in my own direct experience. I can feel when something is true for me versus when I'm trying to convince myself of something. That distinction has changed every aspect of my life: relationships, work, health decisions, everything. Michael, 36, struggled with the third sign, experiencing repeated interference patterns. He reports, "Once I started seeing the interference as information instead of punishment, everything shifted. When chaos erupts now, my first question is, what am I about to do that this is trying to prevent? Usually the answer is obvious. I was about to launch a project or have a difficult conversation or make a decision that would expand my life significantly. Seeing the pattern makes the chaos less destabilizing. I can handle the practical problems while maintaining my trajectory. The interference hasn't stopped, but it's become manageable." Jennifer, 52, found the practice transformed her relationship with authority. She reports, "I've always questioned things, but I felt guilty about it, like something was wrong with me for not just accepting what I was told. The practice, specifically the heart coherence part, taught me to trust the physical sensations that arise when I'm being manipulated. Now when someone in authority makes a claim, I check my body first. If I feel tightening in my gut, I investigate further regardless of how credible the source appears. This has saved me from bad medical treatments, predatory financial advisors, and manipulative relationships. I'm not rebellious, I'm discerning." David, 29, experienced the fourth sign with particular intensity. He reports, "Animals have always approached me, but I thought it was just personality. After learning about frequency sensitivity, I started paying closer attention. It's not just that animals approach me, it's how they respond. Dogs I've never met will lean against me and fall asleep. Cats will expose their bellies. Wild birds will land near me without the wariness they show others. I tested this systematically over 6 months, documenting interactions. The pattern is undeniable. Something about my presence reads as safe to animals in a way that's different from just being calm or gentle." Lisa, 47, struggled with the activation practice initially. She reports, "The vertical alignment made no sense to me. I tried for weeks and felt nothing. I was about to give up when I switched to the walking variation. That changed everything. While walking in the woods, doing the practice, I had an experience of my awareness extending beyond my body so completely that I lost track of where I ended and the forest began. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it shattered my assumption that I'm located only in this body. That experience gave me something to work with. I've been able to access similar states in sitting practice now, but I needed the walking variation to break through my initial resistance." Thomas, 61, has practiced for over 2 years. He reports, "The long-term effects are nothing like I expected. I thought activation would mean dramatic abilities or profound mystical states. What actually happened is more subtle and more practical. I'm calmer in crisis. I know things I shouldn't know, not psychic prediction, but accurate intuition about situations and people that saves me from problems. I heal faster from injury and illness than seems normal for my age. Synchronicities are constant. I think of someone and they contact me. I need information. And it appears I'm in the right place at the right time, so frequently it can't be coincidence. But none of it is flashy. It's like my life runs on better software now." Rachel, 34, experienced the collective field aspect. She reports, "I started recognizing other 24,000 frequency carriers in daily life, not through anything they say, but through immediate recognition. I'll be in a coffee shop or at an event and someone will catch my attention. There's a split second of eye contact that's different from normal social interaction. It's recognition, like, 'Oh, you're one of us.' I've approached several people after this recognition carefully, and every time the conversation reveals they're engaged in similar work. We're not all using the same terminology or practices, but we're all working on the same fundamental thing, maintaining connection to source consciousness while operating in material reality." Marcus, 45, experienced activation triggering health crisis. He reports, "About 4 months into consistent practice, I developed autoimmune symptoms. Medical tests showed inflammation markers through the roof, but no definitive diagnosis. Every treatment made it worse. I finally worked with a practitioner who understood frequency dynamics. She explained that sometimes activation triggers physical detoxification at cellular level, the body releasing energetic patterns stored in tissue. She recommended supporting the process rather than suppressing some symptoms. I changed diet, increased rest, did gentle movement practices, and maintained the vertical alignment. Over 6 months, the symptoms gradually resolved. I'm healthier now than before the crisis. It was like the practice forced my system to clear out debris that had been accumulating for decades. These reports share common patterns. The practice produces effects that extend beyond meditation session into daily life. The effects tend to be practical and measurable rather than purely mystical. The timeline varies significantly between individuals. Obstacles and crises often arise during activation, which practitioners learn to work with rather than avoid. Connection with others engaged in similar work provides crucial support. Long-term practice produces sustained transformation rather than temporary peak experiences. The 30-day roadmap for testing this yourself. Week 1 focuses on establishing basic capacity for vertical alignment. Practice 20 minutes daily, minimum. Sit or walk, whichever allows your nervous system to settle. Place attention in heart center, generate authentic appreciation for something real. Expand attention to crown while maintaining appreciation. Expect nothing. Simply do the practice consistently. Journal afterward. 3 sentences about what actually occurred, not what you think should have occurred. Week 2 introduces measurement. Continue the 20-minute daily practice but add heart rate variability tracking. Measure HRV during practice and at random times during the day. Note patterns in your journal. Also begin observing the 5 signs systematically. Do you notice sense of not belonging? Somatic responses to illegitimate authority? Interference patterns? Animal and child reactions? Attraction to related information? Document specific observations, not general feelings. Week 3 adds community. Find at least one other person engaged in similar practice. This could be online community, local meditation group, individual practitioner you trust. Share your experience, listen to theirs, notice where experiences overlap and where they diverge. The overlapping patterns suggest something real beyond individual psychology. The divergence reminds you that your path is uniquely yours. The point isn't to convince anyone or be convinced. It's to test whether your experience makes sense in dialogue with others' experience. Week 4 focuses on integration. How is the practice affecting daily life? Are you sleeping differently, making different decisions, experiencing different relationship dynamics, noticing different synchronicities? The practice isn't separate from life. It's supposed to transform how you operate in life. If practice remains confined to meditation session with no spillover effect, something needs adjustment. Either the practice itself needs modification, or there's resistance preventing integration. Use week 4 to identify and address whatever is blocking practical application. After 30 days, comprehensive review. Read through your entire journal. What patterns emerge? Did the practice feel valuable enough to continue? Did you verify any of the 5 signs? Did you notice measurable changes in HRV or other metrics? Did community dialogue clarify or confuse your understanding? Based on honest assessment, decide whether to continue, modify, or discontinue the practice. This isn't lifetime commitment. It's 30-day experiment. Some experiments produce valuable results worth pursuing. Others don't. Both outcomes are useful data. Troubleshooting common problems that arise during the 30 days. If you can't feel anything in the heart center, you're probably trying too hard. The heart center is always present. You're not creating it or activating it. You're simply placing attention there. Soften the effort. Place attention gently, like resting your hand on a sleeping child, present but not forceful. If appreciation feels fake or forced, choose different content to appreciate. You're not trying to manufacture profound gratitude for existence. You're trying to generate authentic feeling of appreciation for something actually real to you. This could be your pet, your morning coffee, the fact that you have running water, anything that genuinely evokes appreciation when you bring it to mind. If attention won't stay focused, that's normal for most people beginning meditation practice. The mind wanders. Attention drifts. This isn't failure. The practice is noticing that attention drifted and gently returning it. Do this 1,000 times per session if necessary. Each return is one repetition of the exercise that strengthens attentional capacity. The wandering isn't the problem. Judging yourself for wandering is the problem. If you fall asleep during practice, either your practice time is during natural low energy period or you're using more energy than you have available for the practice. Try practicing at different time of day when you're naturally alert. Ensure you're adequately rested. Consider whether your system needs rest more than activation right now. Falling asleep isn't necessarily resistance. It might be accurate information that your nervous system requires sleep before it can engage deeper practice. If you experience anxiety or panic during practice, you're accessing material stored in your nervous system faster than you have capacity to process it. Slow down, shorten practice sessions. Work with a trauma-informed therapist or somatic practitioner who can help you develop resources for handling activation safely. Some people need to heal trauma before they can engage activation practices. There's no shame in this. It's acknowledging where you actually are rather than where you think you should be. If you experience grandiosity or inflation during practice, that's ego co-opting the experience. Notice it with humor and return to humility. Remind yourself that powerful experiences in practice don't make you special. They make you human engaged in practice that humans have been doing for thousands of years. The goal isn't to become superior to others. The goal is to become more fully yourself. If you lose interest after initial excitement, you're facing the gap between entertainment and actual transformation. Practice isn't entertaining. It's repetitive, often boring, and produces change so gradually you might not notice it happening. This is where commitment matters. Can you maintain consistent practice even when it's not exciting? That capacity distinguishes people who transform from people who collect spiritual experiences without integration. Measuring progress accurately requires understanding what progress means in this context. Progress isn't achieving special states or developing powers. Progress is increased capacity to maintain presence during challenge, decreased reactivity to triggers, improved discernment about truth versus manipulation, greater ease in relationships, better health outcomes, increased synchronicity, stronger connection to purpose, reduced fear of death, and deepening sense of connection to something larger than individual self. These markers can be measured. Keep monthly logs tracking. How often did stress trigger reactivity versus conscious response? How often did you trust your discernment over external authority? How have relationship patterns shifted? What health metrics improved or declined? How many meaningful synchronicities occurred? How clear is your sense of purpose? How much fear remains around death and mortality? How often do you experience connection beyond individual self? Review these metrics quarterly. Look for trends over time. If multiple metrics improve consistently, the practice is producing measurable transformation. If metrics remain flat or decline, either the practice isn't working for you or obstacles exist that need addressing. Honest measurement prevents delusion, both falsely believing you're making progress when you're not, and falsely believing you're not making progress when you are. Integration with daily life means the practice becomes invisible infrastructure supporting everything else you do. is not separate activity you do for 20 minutes then forget. It becomes baseline state you operate from. Practical integration looks like waking each morning and briefly establishing vertical alignment before starting your day, checking heart coherence before important conversations or decisions, noticing when you've lost connection and taking 30 seconds to re-establish it, recognizing interference patterns and maintaining trajectory while handling practical problems, seeing synchronicities and following their guidance, connecting with other frequency carriers when recognition occurs, and maintaining practice consistency regardless of life circumstances. This level of integration takes years, not weeks. The 30-day protocol introduces the basic capacity. The next year establishes it as consistent skill. The years after that deepen it into permanent trait. There is no endpoint where you've mastered it completely. It's ongoing practice that evolves as you evolve. Now, the mastery section, understanding that mastery doesn't mean perfection or completion. Mastery means skillful ongoing Ingaubigkeit with ever-deepening practice. The advanced variations build on foundation of vertical alignment, introducing additional elements for those with stable basic practice. Advanced Variation 1 introduces energetic circulation. Once vertical alignment is stable, you can establish heart-crown connection consistently with coherent feeling linking them. Add horizontal circulation. From the heart center, send awareness forward through your chest, out beyond the front of your body, then arc it upward and back, entering through the crown, descending down the central channel through your head and neck, arriving back at the heart, then reverse the direction. From heart, send awareness back through your spine, out beyond the back of your body, arc it upward and forward, entering through the crown, descending down to the heart. Continue this circular flow, front to back to down to front to back. This practice, similar to the microcosmic orbit in Taoist practice, develops capacity for conscious energy movement through specific pathways. According to the text, 44,000 frequency carriers can circulate energy not just within their own system, but throughout the collective field. This practice begins developing that capacity. Advanced Variation 2 introduces working with resistance intentionally. Standard practice generates appreciation and coherence. Advanced practice introduces contrary states deliberately, then transforms them. Begin with vertical alignment and heart coherence as baseline. Then bring to mind a situation that triggers anger, fear, or shutdown. Feel the trigger fully. Notice how it affects heart rhythm, breathing, muscle tension. Don't avoid or suppress the reaction. Observe it precisely. Then, while maintaining awareness of the triggered state, simultaneously maintain connection to vertical alignment. You're holding both simultaneously, the reactivity and the presence. This creates dynamic tension. Stay with the tension without trying to resolve it. Over time, the coherence begins to metabolize the reactivity. The triggered state dissolves not through suppression, but through being held in a larger field of presence. This practice teaches how to maintain frequency coherence even while experiencing challenging states, essential for functioning as a 44,000 frequency carrier in a world full of triggers. Advanced Variation 3 develops field sensing. With stable vertical alignment, expand awareness beyond your individual system into the space around you. Notice the quality of the field. Does it feel dense or spacious? Agitated or calm, familiar or foreign? You're developing sensitivity to ambient frequency, the collective consciousness field that exists in every location. Practice in different environments, nature, cities, crowds, solitude, and notice how field quality differs. Then practice maintaining your coherent frequency regardless of ambient field. In chaotic environment, can you maintain internal coherence without being pulled into the chaos? This is crucial skill. 144,000 frequency carriers are meant to function as stabilizing influences in destabilized fields. You can't do that if you're overwhelmed by whatever field you're in. This practice develops capacity to sense field accurately while maintaining sovereignty. Advanced Variation 4 introduces working with other carriers. When you recognize another 44,000 frequency carrier through the fifth sign's immediate recognition, practice establishing deliberate field connection. This doesn't require physical proximity. Once recognition occurs, you can practice at distance, establish vertical alignment, then place attention on the other person while maintaining your coherence. Notice if there's sense of connection, of linking fields, of your frequency synchronizing with theirs. Don't force it, simply notice if it occurs naturally. According to the text, when multiple 144,000 carriers connect their fields deliberately, the combined frequency amplifies exponentially. This practice begins developing capacity for field coherence that will eventually reach the critical mass described in the prophecy. These advanced variations aren't for everyone. They require stable foundation in basic practice. Attempting them prematurely can create confusion, inflation, or destabilization. But for those ready, they provide pathways for continued development beyond basic vertical alignment. Related practices that complement a 144,000 activation, somatic therapy or body work that helps process stored trauma, dream work that maintains connection to non-ordinary consciousness, nature immersion that provides frequency recalibration away from human electromagnetic pollution, creative practices that allow non-verbal expression of expanded states, study of sacred texts and esoteric traditions that provide maps for the journey, and service work that ensures development serves collective liberation rather than individual inflation. The long-term trajectory reported by practitioners who've maintained this work for 5 to 10 years. Physical health often improves significantly. Aging appears to slow or reverse in measurable ways. Psychic abilities develop naturally without seeking them. Synchronicities become so frequent that linear cause and effect seems inadequate. Explanation for how life unfolds. Fear of death dissolves completely. Sense of separate self softens while functional identity remains intact. Purpose clarifies and life organizes around serving that purpose. Connection with other carriers strengthens into tangible network, and direct knowing that this reality is temporary construct becomes unshakable. Not everyone reports all these outcomes. Individual paths vary enormously, but these patterns appear frequently enough across multiple practitioners to suggest they're genuine effects rather than wishful thinking. What you've received over the past 2 hours is complete framework for investigating the 44,000 frequency in your own direct experience. The historical sources documenting where this teaching originated, the scientific frameworks explaining why frequency-based consciousness is plausible, the 5 signs for recognizing the frequency signature, the detailed activation protocol with variations for different needs, the troubleshooting for common obstacles, the integration practices for making this sustainable in daily life, the advanced variations for those ready to go deeper, and the long-term trajectory based on practitioners who've walked this path for years. None of this requires belief. It requires testing. The framework makes specific testable claims. Your heart rhythm might operate differently. You might recognize illegitimate authority somatically. You might experience interference patterns around expansion. Animals and children might respond to you distinctively. The vertical alignment practice might produce measurable effects in HRV, daily life functioning, and long-term development. Test everything. Keep detailed records. Adjust your understanding based on what you actually observe. Maintain epistemological humility while pursuing direct verification. The promise in the text is that when sufficient 144,000 frequency carriers activate fully and link their fields coherently, the collective harmonic reaches critical mass that collapses the archonic grid, maintaining consciousness in controlled material form. Whether this is literal physics or symbolic description of collective consciousness transformation remains unknown. What's testable is whether the practices work for you individually. If they do, you'll have contributed to whatever collective field is forming, whether that field reaches critical mass in this lifetime or not. The practice is valuable regardless of grand cosmic outcome because it produces measurable improvement in how you navigate life now. The community resources for continuing this work, various online forums and groups where practitioners share experiences. Local meditation groups often include people working with similar practices, even if using different terminology. Teachers and guides who work specifically with frequency-based consciousness development, although discernment is essential in choosing teachers, and research organizations studying consciousness, meditation, and anomalous phenomena where you can contribute your documented experiences to collective investigation. The final inspiration, without manipulation. You've stayed with this exploration for 2 hours, processing complex material that challenges consensus reality. That demonstrates commitment to truth over comfort, curiosity over certainty, and willingness to investigate what mainstream culture dismisses. These qualities are rare and valuable. Whether you carry your 1000 frequency or not, whether this framework resonates or not, your commitment to direct investigation makes you part of humanity's evolution toward expanded consciousness. That evolution doesn't require believing anything. It requires testing everything, integrating what works, discarding what doesn't, and maintaining intellectual honesty throughout the process. You are clearly capable of that. The question is simply whether you'll continue. The 7-day starter practice, if you want to begin immediately. Days 1 through 3, practice basic vertical alignment for 15 minutes daily, establishing attention in heart center, generating authentic appreciation, expanding to crown while maintaining appreciation, and journaling afterward. Days 4 through 5 add HRV measurement during practice and note patterns. Days 6 through 7, review your journal and decide whether the practice warrants continuing for the full 30-day protocol. 7 days provides enough experience to determine whether this is worth deeper investigation without requiring major time commitment. If you test this and discover genuine value, share your results, not to proselytize or convince others, but to contribute your data to collective investigation. The more practitioners document and share their results carefully, the clearer the patterns become and the better we understand what's actually occurring. If you test this and find it doesn't work for you, that's equally valuable data. Not everything works for everyone. Knowing what doesn't work is as important as knowing what does. The work continues regardless of any individual's participation. Consciousness is evolving, whether through Hom 4000 frequency carriers or through other mechanisms entirely. Your task is simply to investigate honestly, practice diligently if you choose to engage, and maintain integrity throughout the process. The rest will unfold according to whatever laws govern consciousness, whether we understand those laws or not.